Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Welcome to another edition of Cal's Corner Radio here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Cal Korff, and I'm your host, and the executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Folks, as I mention in every episode, because it's true, the agenda or scope of this show, if you will, is that we cover everything from politics to the paranormal, which is a wide variety of subjects, I admit that. Today we're going to do both. We're going to cover the so-called paranormal briefly, and then, of course, we'll switch to politics, which is, I think, more important ultimately. Let's start with paranormal. Now, as I've said before, again, because it's true, I'm not trying to harp on that point, but I'm trying to harp on this point in that UFOs, unidentified flying objects, or what some people call flying saucers, they are often put into the category of the so-called paranormal. It makes no logical sense, but then again, much of the so-called paranormal doesn't make sense. In fact, the very term paranormal, as we've discussed before, is an oxymoron unto itself, which I find to be very revealing. It's like trying to say that you're a little bit pregnant. It's not possible, but, you know, in so-called parapsychology, anything goes because reality doesn't apply. Let's be blunt. So why is it that UFOs are put into the paranormal? I would ask that same question to anybody who puts them there, because they don't belong there. They belong in the normal, and let me tell you why. If you believe in UFOs, as in you think, to quote or paraphrase Stanton Friedman, that some UFOs are someone else's spacecraft, if you believe that we're being visited by aliens, a bunch of Captain Kirks running around there from other planets, whether they're a member of an alien federation or not is just a detail, right? Point is, we're being visited by guys from everyone from the Pleiades to the reptilians from God knows where. Regardless, they're not from here. They're aliens in a otherworldly sense. They're here without a visa, without a permit. They just come and go, abduct people, give them anal probes, chase our planes, do whatever they want with them. You name it. You can read the reports. If all this stuff is going on, why would that be paranormal or supernatural? Wouldn't that be natural? If life is natural and we're just one of God knows how many countless billions and trillions of life forms out there throughout billions and trillions of stars and planets out there in the universe, why would we be the only exception and be the only thing alive and nobody's visiting us way out here in the boonies? Instead, there's galaxies in the universe teeming with life. We're being visited. There's a whole galactic federation out there, the so-called space people, you name it. Again, you've read the reports. Why would that be paranormal? Wouldn't that be normal? Wouldn't we be paranormal because we're not part of the normal Galactic Federation? We're not a member. They have to come to us and do whatever. We can't just get in our spaceship and beam over there. You see how this is kind of upside down and backwards and backwards and implodes itself? So UFOs don't belong in the paranormal. If microbes are found on Mars, that doesn't mean you open up a new area of biology called parabiology. No, it's biology. It may be exobiology, meaning it's biology from another world existing off of our planet, but it's still biology. So there is no such thing as a paranormal, folks. What we call the paranormal today, if it is real, if people really do have psychic powers and we have yet to tap into that magical stuff, it is really normal. We just have yet to discover it, okay? To use a rough analogy, when Christopher Columbus sailed and made a wrong turn and discovered so-called America, even though he thought he was landing in India, was that a paranormal discovery? Because once again, he proved the Earth was round and there was this land that nobody knew existed? No, it wasn't a paranormal discovery. It was a normal discovery. It may have been considered to be a weird, paranormal, supernatural, just really out there claim at the time that he'd really been there, but he was able to prove that it had really happened. He had plenty of witnesses, and he brought back slaves and a bunch of booty and a bunch of other loot and things like that. So he had the evidence. So regardless of what you thought about it, there was no question it happened, as history has proven. So what is the latest in the paranormal news of UFOdom this week? Well, there's two major key stories which have actually hit the mainstream media, and this is beginning to get rather interesting. Either we're going through another cyclical phase where all the mainstream media and mainstream media are bending over backwards to print UFO stories, even desperate ones, or maybe there's kind of something else going on, maybe a little bit deeper, and maybe there's going to be some sort of disclosure. We don't know about that. Well, you may remember that a few days ago, Los Angeles-based journalist George Knapp, who, as I've said before, in my opinion, has objectivity issues, I'll just put it that way, concerning certain UFO cases and promoting hoaxers like Bob Lazar. Well, what you have is you have an issue where he bent over backwards. His station in Vegas put on TV a segment, and he, of course, boasted about it on the internet and on Twitter, which he often does. He said that the Navy has confirmed, that is, Department of Defense basically has confirmed that the so-called 3 UFO videos, the To the Stars Academy, that were the subject of the Harry Reid New York Times story, also the expose story that was broken here on the X Zone and on this show as to why that whole thing stinks, the Robert Kiviat lawsuit that's now still underway, involved as a offshoot of what happened with Reid's initial effort, etc., that whole convoluted story. We've talked about it in several shows here before, which you can listen to again in the archive here. Well, make a long story short, Knapp had said that here is proof, here's the actual paperwork that cleared and authorized the release, declassification of these videos, and they really come from defense sources. Wow. Well, it's obvious to anybody, in my opinion, with an IQ of over 10, I'm sorry to be so blunt, that that's not what this paperwork really says. Hello? In fact, some of it is censored, including the person who wrote it or signed it or authorized it. It's really ridiculous. It's more puff and fluff, and you have to accept it on faith. But real journalism doesn't do that. Real journalism doesn't present the type of it could be, therefore it is type logic, which Knapp, of course, is infamous for. What the paperwork really shows is that it really wasn't cleared in the way that he and the To the Stars Academy are falsely claiming. And I have to tell you that that's a rather interesting issue here, because it's one thing if MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, which a lot of people who are old school MUFON types like me think is a joke nowadays compared to what it used to be under the original ownership and directorship of Walt Andrus. He was a longtime friend of mine going back decades. Met him when I was a kid. Anyway, make a long story short, if MUFON claims a case is real and that this stuff comes from the government, okay, let's say they're wrong or that they're lying. Well, that's MUFON. They've done it before. They've been wrong before, and yes, there are times where they have not told the truth. There's also been plenty of times where they've just been wrong. Nothing wrong with that. It's why you're wrong that's important. But with To the Stars Academy, this is a different animal. This is a company that has sold to the public stock. You can buy stock, or could have when they had their offering, stock in this company, and they said what they're about, what they initially used to be. I've got the papers, the matter of public record with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and now they're saying that they've got all this stuff, and based on all this stuff and what they're doing, they think that they can make money out of this. They have a media department, all this other stuff. It's in the official paperwork. And they're marketing products with their name on it, trying to sell an idea, a concept, based on all this evidence that justifies what they're doing, the evidence being supposedly real. They're not saying, hey, here's some fake stuff. Here's some fake stuff that we even helped, let's say prime the pump on. Let's be politically correct here. And we want you to invest money in it, even though it's not really what we're saying it is. See, they're not doing that. They don't even come close to saying that. What they do is they say and put in writing and legally binding documents that are legal under penalty of perjury. It's actually a crime if you lie when you fill out these documents and state this under penalty of perjury and you submit it to the Securities and Exchange Commission. You better be careful because you better be telling the truth. And we must remember that the New York Times made some very interesting claims, which it got straight from people involved in TTSA and Harry Reid's UFO debacle, which happened. They talked about special buildings being created on the property of Bigelow Aerospace and how these buildings were modified and specially constructed so they could house the evidence. Now, what evidence is this? This is material evidence recovered. It says all this in the public statements during this project. In fact, it says that these are of alleged extraterrestrial artifacts or devices. They're very vague on what they are, of course, because I argue that they don't really exist, all right? And what somebody has to do is step up here and say, there's a way to cross-examine this with consequences. And that's going to be a very interesting concept here, because the UFO field, parapsychology in general, UFO-DOM, whatever you want to call it, DOM, UFO-DOM or UFO-DUMB, depending on your point of view, there's no accountability in there. A guy can fake a flying saucer photo, sell it to the Inquirer for $500, laugh all the way to the bank, commit that fraud, sell it as real. He can later even confess he faked it, and he doesn't go to jail. He doesn't go to prison. Ironically, it's only been the country of Canada, and only recently in the last 18 months or so, where finally some laws have been passed where if you claim you've got psychic powers and you're a tarot reader and you can do whatever and you are predicting this and somebody thinks you're a fraud, they can actually have you prosecuted now. And some people have been, even in the U.S. and the state of New York. Some of these so-called fortune tellers, which are frauds, are being prosecuted for taking people for millions and millions of dollars. Depends on the case, depends on the victim. In the case of this event here, you have a TV show that's coming up on a major network. It's on History Channel, which is funny because it's not really real history. It's a show that's going to hype these Pentagon material exposed in the New York Times. It's going to say that it's basically real, and there's evidence to basically prove that it is anything but real. And we'll come back to that in just a moment. But before we go to the commercial break, I want to leave you with this thought here. The Navy has said, point blank, because people have asked them because of what Knapp reported, that this paperwork that has been released and reported by Knapp as being proof isn't proof of any such thing. And kudos goes to John Greenewald of the Black Vault for raising this issue, for bringing it to a forefront, forcing Knapp to say something. Knapp chose to say the wrong thing. He now stands exposed for it, and more power to him. We'll be back after this break.
It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shamans worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions. offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Welcome to the segment here on Cal's Corner Radio Show here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Cal Korf and I'm your host. Once again, the executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. So to wrap up this story and recap of this latest development on the To the Stars Academy and the so-called Pentagon UFOs, again, they've been in all the major news for the last probably a couple of months now. Again, it started with the story here that I had written and broke with the X Zone Investigates part of this network and series coming up will be on Simul TV. Again, X Zone Investigates. I had written a story about Harry Reid's black budget Pentagon UFO program, talked about some of the people involved. The story went viral. A couple of million hits came in through the different social media links and shares and stuff. I've seen some of those numbers. Rob McConnell did some exclusive interviews with Robert Kiviat. I had him on my show here. And that lawsuit, and that is running its course now, as we talked about, and we warned people was going to happen. History Channel is going to run with this thing, saying it's real, even though there's evidence to prove it's not. Shame on them. They might as well call the thing Space Vikings. It would be just as factual. So this is not over yet. It's going to be interesting, especially when you have this latest development, as I was just talking about, where you have George Knapp now putting his reputation online, and now he's got a deserved self-inflicted black eye. He deserves it. Sorry, I'm a fellow investigative journalist myself. When I read what he was claiming, I thought it was predictable because I've known his history of promoting past hoaxers like Bob Lazar. Shame on him. And, of course, To the Stars Academy is saying nothing but sweetness and light things because they've got investors to try to please. They've claimed they've raised over $30 million, depending on what story you believe. The whole thing is just, well, a cluster you-know-what. So it deserves to be unraveled. It will be. It is being investigated at various levels. The truth will eventually come out. The question is how many people will be misled and, dare I say, seemingly ripped off by the time the dust settles on this. So once again, the Navy has now confirmed officially that the documentation released by To the Stars Academy and reported by Las Vegas reporter George Knapp on TV and on his own Twitter accounts and on various social media forums is not correct. He is wrong. All right, let's switch subjects now. Let's talk about the fallout that has occurred recently. Again, this is predictable, this polarization, if you will, over the release of the Mueller report and, of course, the congressional testimony that's been going on by the current Attorney General, William Barr, versus the deliberate leaking, which was illegal, of a letter from Mueller to the Justice Department expressing his concerns over the way that Barr had released the material. Now, I realize this is going to get a little bit convoluted here, so let me try to step back a couple of levels, if you will, and try to simplify it for those who aren't really interested in minutia here. But you have to remember that basically this whole thing started, and this is the real genesis. It doesn't matter whether you are happy or upset that Hillary Clinton is not in the White House. What I'm about to tell you is independent of who the current president is. They are facts that stand on their own. You may remember that when Trump was elected, he complained that the FBI had spied on him. He even claimed that his phone was tapped and so on. Trump was very careless with some of the wording, but his point was right. Not only did the government spy on him, we now know the name of the female agent who was sent in from the FBI on behalf of the Justice Department to spy on Donald Trump. She was there to ensure that there would be a so-called layer of integrity there, so that there would be some filtering that would screen out any biases. And you have to love that irony, because one can argue that despite the secret presence of the FBI there, there was nothing but bias. So you may remember then that former high-level FBI personnel like Peter Strzok were then deposed before Congress. You had those embarrassing text messages where he talked about there's no way this guy's going to win, we're going to take him out, etc. And under oath, he said that and admitted that that was just bravado, that he didn't mean it or take it seriously, shouldn't be taken seriously. And, of course, he was having an affair with the woman in the FBI that he was trying to impress with these text messages that, we'll make sure we stop Trump. Well, as a journalist, I was disgusted when I watched the so-called interrogations or questioning by these committees. It's so frustrating to see these elected officials who are supposed to be the best people to hold their office because that's why they win the election, ideally, right? Well, it seems like they can't even argue their own way out of a closed closet if they were locked in it. They couldn't talk their way out of a paper bag if they were sealed in it. It's ridiculous. Here you have Strzok admitting that he engaged in bravado, which is basically his way of saying, I exaggerated, I embellished, I lied. I wasn't really going to get him. I was just being a macho, full of myself, idiot, okay? But what does the committee do when they're talking to him? They're like, okay, all right, thanks. Instead of saying things like, hey, why did you even do this to begin with? What was going through that stupid mind of yours? And yes, it is stupid when you do something like this. And why were you doing this with a fellow FBI agent? Was the fact that you were sleeping with her, did that have any factor in this at all? Is it that you hadn't progressed long enough in your date, so maybe you wanted some, she hadn't given it to you yet, so you're going to embellish and make yourself appear more like Rambo than you really are? What was the exact thinking process, since obviously you had to think this through, to deliberately choose the words that you chose, which you now admit were basically pure BS? Talk us through the process here. And then tell me what courses you took in the FBI at taxpayer expense to train you to misbehave this way. Because you would never do anything willfully wrong, would you? Do you see how easy it would have been to destroy and get to the bottom of this? To easily prove that this guy is either lying to talk himself out of a bunch of lies to begin with, or that this guy really does have a problem and the American people need to know that. And if he's doing this in one case and there really wasn't even a smoking gun here, God knows what he's doing in much more serious cases. But see, none of this happened. And it is a complete joke and pure, stupid, boring public theater that what happens in these committees. Believe me, I wish I knew how I could get up there and go up there for free and cross-examine these guys. I wish, in fact, believe me, I'd love to get them on TV on trial and put them on trial and ask the tough questions that everybody is avoiding. Nobody's doing it. Somebody's got to do it. And it's better that it be done in some kind of structured way than 50 billion people on YouTube saying whatever their opinions are. Yes, let them have their opinions, but there's no focus to it there. And now you see the same thing going on here again. Now you've got people upset with the way that Barr is wordsmithing things. He seems like he's doing it. It's over the dispute over the Mueller report, but yet the Mueller report itself wordsmiths. It plays that game. Now, let's use a very real example here. In the American judicial system, let's say that you are charged with a crime. You demand and you receive a jury trial. You're either found guilty or not guilty. Okay? Now, when we say that somebody is not guilty, we say they're innocent. But there are people who will say, no, he's not innocent, he's not guilty. Oh, well, that's different. Okay. Now, is it really different? Well, not according to the dictionary. Innocent is innocent, guilty is guilty. Okay? Pregnant is pregnant, not pregnant is not pregnant. It's black and white. It's binary. Now, the Robert Mueller report said there was no evidence of collusion. But we're not exonerating the president. There's no evidence, but we're not exonerating him. Well, that's like saying, isn't it, folks? You're not guilty, but we're not exonerating you. There's no evidence you're guilty, so we returned a verdict of not guilty, but we're still not exonerating you. I believe that Robert Mueller knew what he was doing and got frustrated at two things. One is our system, the American system, was not and remains inept, incompetent, stupid, unprepared for a president with the background of Donald Trump. I'll give you one example that proves it. And, of course, there hasn't been a Donald Trump before in any country, not at least in a so-called modern Western democracy. There have been dictatorships, of course. Now, look at Mar-a-Lago, his fancy resort retreat. He loves going there. So guess what, folks? Every time he goes there every other weekend, after promising he'd never play a game of golf while he was president, I was one of the few journalists who said he's lying on that, and he has, while slamming Obama for playing too much golf, even though he's played many times much more golf now and a fraction of the time he's been in office. The hypocrisy aside, every time he goes every 2 weeks to his favorite resort, he gets millions of dollars in extra money that he wouldn't get if he weren't president, because the Secret Service and all those other guys, including people from CIA, the guys with the nuclear football, all that stuff, they all got to go with him. They got to stay somewhere. And guess they've got to pay a discounted rate, but they're still paying, and he's still making money. So let's say that I built Mar-a-Lago, and I didn't really care for it, but I love the fact it makes me money, let other people stay there. Well, if I suddenly was going to get paid millions of dollars to stay there just because I'm president, I'd suddenly love it too. And that's, I think, what's going on with Trump, independent of the fact that I think he really does love it. But he's not stupid. It's not lost on him that just making a point to go there because he just has to go there, can't go anywhere else, right, folks? He gets paid millions of dollars every time he does it. You know, I'll be honest, I hate the game of golf. I find it just not interesting. But if I was going to get paid millions of dollars to go play it, I probably would like the sport. All right, so the other thing that has come very clear is that Mueller wrote his report in such a way, knowing that his investigation had handed off a lot of evidence to state prosecutors. So this is not over. So while Donald Trump's family members have been so-called exonerated or found not to have colluded or broken any laws, let's just put it that way, that's the key. They did collude, but suddenly even Trump's own lawyers have gone from saying there was no collusion to, oh, collusion isn't illegal. They've, again, moved the goalposts because they're guilty. We'll be back after this commercial break.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by L.A. Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, After the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Welcome back to the third segment here on Cal's Corner Radio Show on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Cal Korff. I'm your host. Rob McConnell is the executive producer of the show. As I was saying before the break, once again, our system is not prepared for a candidate like Trump. He's the first president where he can go off to a multi-million-dollar retreat that he built and then go ahead and get money to go there to play golf at taxpayer expense. Yeah. Tough gig if you can get it. And, of course, he has earned that so-called right because he won the election over Hillary. But our system is not prepared to handle those obvious financial conflicts of interest, and they certainly are that. The other thing, as I was saying before the break, is that Mueller knew during his investigation that they had uncovered other crimes not related to anything they were investigating. But that's, of course, what makes the special counsel or special prosecutor rather special, because he can go after you for anything. If you went ahead and spit on the sidewalk at age 3, and, that's a crime, of course, to spit on the sidewalk in some states, they could come after you for that, so to speak. That's what a special prosecutor can do when he's digging through everything. And that's why a lot of people don't like them and don't want to cooperate with them. Or when they want to cooperate with them because they want to do the right thing, they arrange, like some people do, to funnel the information through a third party so that if they did, God forbid, spit on the sidewalk at age 11, it won't be held against them. All right, getting back to the point here, Mueller knew that some evidence would go to state prosecutors, and it has done that on several occasions. So while Trump's family and his sons have been let off the hook for now, that doesn't mean they're off the hook for good. It also means that Trump's overall enterprise and businesses may be under the microscope soon. And, of course, these state prosecutors have very different levels of authority than Robert Mueller did. And, of course, they can still put people in jail for crimes relevant and not relevant to anything that may or may not be involved in collusion or with the original investigation, or other crimes that may be ancillary to it or may have occurred during those various time windows. So this isn't over until it's over. And let's be blunt. The Democrats are going to drag this out at least through this upcoming election, so they've got to try to kill the clock and time it. Unfortunately for them, and fortunately for voters, they want a president that's going to do more than just run on the platform of anybody but Trump. They want answers, they want solutions, they want proposals, they want ideas, they want policies and programs that are going to work. In fact, a new poll came out today that's rather interesting. For the first time in a long time, most Americans want fundamental changes in the American system. In other words, they want actual changes to the Constitution and the way the government functions. They want things like term limits now. Well, who can blame them? You might say that's not fair to really qualified, competent, great people. You're right, it's not. Well, yes and no. I don't think you can really make that argument. When you start narrowing it down to a particular group of people, you've lost the concept. The idea of having term limits is to force a limit to the limit in damage that any bad apple might do, or the limit of any person might do, so that you have change and turnover in government, hopefully at enough of a refreshing rate that it is good for the overall people and populace. That's what you try to shoot for. But no, term limits, people tend to personalize them, saying, it's a bad idea because, it hurts people who are doing a great job. Well, if they're doing such a great job, then why aren't they leading the damn country? Why is it that the people who are doing the worst jobs are leading the country over the cliff, and they're in all the positions to control the right levers of power? Why is it? Well, because that's the way the system works. People arrange it that way once they get into power so that the corrupt lead the corrupt. It's not a problem that is unique to only America. Believe me, I've been to 27 different countries. I have seen up close some of those governments in ways that I wouldn't wish on some people that I just don't like. And I will tell you that the American system and way of government is far superior and much more transparent and accountable than, say, what goes on in India. Trust me. But the fact is that a lot of this stuff and corruption is endemic, and it is not a coincidence that in the most populated areas of the world, we're talking Asia, it is not a coincidence that the three most corrupt countries in the world remain China, Russia, and India. And that, of course, is most of the world's population in one block. So no wonder the rest of the planet pays for it in some form or another. The Chinese way is simply offer them money. That's also what the Saudis do. That's also what the Russians do. It's what the Indians do. It's what they do in the Middle East. And, of course, they do it in America. Look at the Democrats. If you had to say, look at them. They stand for environmentalism, the New Green Deal, workers' rights, Medicare for all, right? Well, okay, but 1/3 of them have taken millions of dollars, tens of millions from big pharma and big insurance, and they're not for Medicare for all. And there's just enough of them, like Dianne Feinstein, who hold senior enough positions to sink any such proposition. Because, put another way, like Hillary Clinton, they're on the take of Wall Street, big banks, entities like Goldman Sachs, because under the Clintons, during their Clinton's presidency, the Democratic National Party basically sold out, because they knew that if they didn't have enough money to win elections, like the Republicans were in bed with big business, they couldn't take the White House. And that was their justification. And the excuse at the time was largely, well, we can control them or we'll be a little bit better. No. In fact, if you look at Donald Trump sitting in the White House today, as the media reported again today, and it's a rare exception, the reason Donald Trump is in the White House is because people didn't and were not happy with the legacy of Barack Obama. In fact, Trump is Barack Obama's legacy. Now, what does all this have to do with all this stuff going on at present? Well, you've got a situation where you've got the current presidential election coming up. You've got Joe Biden now in the race. And he represents the so-called center, right? He's supposed to bring everybody together. This includes the people on the left, the people on the right. He's supposed to represent stability, familiarity. Joe's getting very emotional and personal. He's going to be able to cry on cue now when he can remember his lines and not slur them. Let's be honest, it has been pretty so far. On the other hand, you have the Democratic Party, who is divided. You have people like Kamala Harris, who loves her moment of 15 minutes of fame. She did a commendable job. She has a background as a prosecutor, of course, not necessarily one with complete integrity, but she is, of course, a famous prosecutor. She held her own when she grilled Attorney General Barr. They're both lawyers. They're both well-oiled attorneys. And, of course, she's being praised by people who support her that, wow, look at her. She's a rising star in the Democratic Party. Folks, don't fall for that. It's not about what Kamala Harris says she will do. It's about what she has failed to do in the time she has been in office. Democrats love to complain about Mnuchin being in office. Well, he's in there because of Kamala Harris. End of story. So Kamala Harris, in my opinion, is a pandering phony. Last week, she bent over backwards to talk about the fact that the majority of the people holding key roles in her campaign are women. Well, that's sexism. Sorry, it is. The moment you focus on how many people are male or female, that's sexism. What if I ran for president and I said, hey, I've got 11 guys in my campaign and 8 of them are men? That makes me a sexist. But if I'm Kamala Harris and I say I've got 11 women and 7 of them are 11 people, and 7 of them are women, and most of them are women of color. Well, that's double pandering, but that's what Kamala Harris does, and that is part of what's very wrong with today's Democratic Party. And now you have a very different dynamic a couple years into Trump's first year in office, or term in office. You've got Bernie Sanders leading the so-called socialists. He's the front runner along with Joe Biden. That was not the case 2 years ago. He, of course, was behind Hillary Clinton, respectable second place, and he would have done better had Hillary Clinton not cheated. So during the grilling of Barr in the congressional hearings, you had Kamala Harris. She did a decent job. She pointed out basically the obvious, that the Trump administration stinks, that they really did some really stupid, dumb, questionable things. But none of them rose to the level of breaking laws. And then Mueller saying they couldn't even establish intent. In fact, Mueller was basically saying, without directly saying it, that some of them, like Donald Trump Jr., were too stupid to have the intent to collude with the Russians the way that CNN and Rachel Maddow and all these other bleeding heart liberal left-wing la-la news sources were claiming and screaming for over 2 years. And then word comes out today that CNN has not recovered in its ratings ever since the Barr memo came out indicating no collusion. And now I'm finally going to come back to my main point on this. No collusion. Okay, meaning not collusion to create a crime that you can do anything about. Were there games going on? Were there people on the side around Trump trying to line their pockets like his lawyer, Cohen, who charged $1 million just for access? Absolutely it was going on. But that wasn't cutting the Russians a deal and agreeing to collude with them to, make sure Hillary didn't win the White House. That wasn't calling up Vladimir and saying, what can I do for you? Won't you help me win the election? What do you want? You want me to pull out of Ukraine? No problem. No, didn't happen. And it was kind of obvious that the evidence was never there. And yet the government lied and said they didn't spy on Trump. We now know the name of the pseudonym that the female FBI agent used to get in there, where she brought up the issue, trying to find out if there was any evidence for it, found out there wasn't, reported it back, but it was ignored. And then we come back to something that still has not been addressed with, which we'll talk about after the commercial break as well. This original thing that sparked a lot of this, the Steele dossier, that was paid for by Hillary Clinton's lawyer. That was pure collusion with the Russians, because they knew when they were paying millions of dollars for this juicy document that the data came from the top sources in the Kremlin. We'll be back after this commercial break.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Christopher Fulton is a survivor of the national security state. All he wanted to do was preserve history when he acquired a Cartier watch from the estate of President Kennedy's personal secretary. But that simple act set off a terrible chain reaction. He was pursued by the U.S. Justice Department and the FBI, thrust into the middle of the U.S. government's Assassination Records Review Board, even monitored and pursued by the Russian government. All because that Cartier watch was the missing link of evidence, a timepiece worn by JFK that fateful day in Dallas, a link resulting in Christopher being incarcerated and attacked for 9 years because he opened a hidden chapter in history. The intriguing journey outlined fully in Christopher Fulton's memoir, The Inheritance, is available now through TrineDay.com or Amazon.com. The Inheritance, Poisoned Fruit of JFK's Assassination by Christopher and Michelle Fulton is a must-read, an incredible tale of how easily our own government can overrule justice. The Inheritance, Poisoned Fruit of JFK's Assassination.
Welcome back to the fourth and final segment here on Cal's Corner radio show on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Cal Korff. I'm your host, and the executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Now, as we were talking about, and in this last segment here, we will end it on this subject and related matters, the real collusion that was obvious from day one was not from Donald Trump. That would have been secondary. It was actually from Hillary Clinton. And let me prove it. And again, this is information that anybody can independently verify. It doesn't matter whether you're happy or not that Hillary won or didn't win the election, rather. The fact is that Hillary Clinton's lawyer paid a former British intelligence officer, Richard Steele, for dirt on Donald Trump. This was supposedly compromising information. Now, the Democrats and Hillary supporters like to call it opposition research. Again, this is this stupid American penchant for using politically correct English, which isn't even really correct. It's just a smokescreen. It's BS terminology for hiding what it really was, which was to get something incriminating and dirty on Donald Trump so it could be used against Trump to destroy his chances of beating Hillary Clinton. One of the things that was in this dossier was a sordid, detailed account of how Trump had kinky sex habits and would even urinate on the faces of his sexual partners at hotels in Moscow. This is in the report. And, of course, let's say that that was true, or even if it's not true. If you were to leak that to the media, which already hates Trump, it's not going to help his campaign. And the Clintons are not beyond playing dirty politics. If you think that's not true, then turn off this broadcast and listen to something that will waste your time. All right, now, having said this, it's not illegal to get opposition research. But wait a minute, the opposition research came from sources in the Ukraine and in the Kremlin at the highest levels, people who knew Putin personally. And yet Hillary Clinton pays, I think it was something like $11 million for this, maybe even more. Where did that money come from? Who gave it to him? And gee, if you donated to Hillary Clinton's campaign, did she tell you that part of your campaign contribution was going to go for a phony dossier to be used against Trump? Did she tell you that that's where your deduction would go? No, she didn't, did she? So what happens to Hillary Clinton and the Democrats who did it? Well, they've gotten away largely unscathed. And Trump has been criticized by the Trump-hating media, of course, for bothering to investigate, daring to investigate this whole Steele dossier thing. Well, I got news for you Hillary supporters and bleeding liberal, la-la left-wing types. How would you feel if somebody made up something about you that wasn't true? It contained details that were really morbid, that were not true. They were just lies, vicious lies. And somebody paid $11 million to get this bundle of lies about you. And this bundle of lies is then turned into a grand jury in a FISA court to get a top-secret warrant to spy on you, to see if any of it is true, plus God knows what other things. How would you feel? I'll repeat the dynamics of this. A series of false claims are written about you in a report that somebody pays at least $11 million for. There's at least $11 million worth of hurt in this report. That report is then used to get a warrant to spy on you because it's supposed to be true. Everything in there is represented to the best of one's ability under penalty of perjury. Well, turns out it wasn't true. In fact, the core tenets of the dossier have never been verified because they're not true. And yet that bogus information was used for a garbage in, garbage out process to abuse and misuse the FISA court. And the FISA court has had its integrity problems in the past. You can Google and read the Inspector General's blistering audits of the FISA reports, where they say that in the past, people have been innocently railroaded on that because evidence has been lied when presented to the judge. It's been lied about. And that was the case here. In this case, they didn't have to lie about the evidence. They just had to submit it because the evidence itself was a lie. And if you say it's not a lie, we'll prove it's true. Any of it, other than the spelling of Donald Trump's name. You really largely can't. Any charge of any substance in there has not been proven. And if I am wrong on that, I will happily have anybody on the show who can prove any major claim is true on there, and I'll be happy to admit I'm wrong. I don't mind being wrong. I don't have an ego in this. In fact, as I've said many times before, ever since I understood the concept that sometimes being wrong is one of the best ways to learn. What's important is that you learn. Duh, hello. So now we have the issue of, well, here was the real collusion. Because remember, Donald Trump's sons met with that Russian lawyer who was supposed to bring opposition research dirt on Hillary, and they agreed to meet with her. And that's not illegal. The meeting happened. There was no dirt. There was no data exchange. The subject was not even talked about. Meeting ended up being a waste of time. It was documented as a farce. But who set up that meeting? Could one of Hillary's operatives, the lawyer had done work for Mutual Connections, have gone ahead and said, yeah, set this up and we can get him later? Who knows? Because the woman, the lawyer, who now has been indicted and charged, she's not in the U.S. You're never going to hear from her. And if she did try to enter the U.S., she'd be arrested on the spot. So we may never know who controlled or paid her. And she's protected by attorney-client privilege, depending on the nature of the relationship. So Aunt can't do anything there. And Fifth Amendment can be used against her because that's the nature of the Fifth Amendment. You have the right not to say anything. You have the right not to incriminate yourself. Yeah. So there you go. Perfect crime, folks. All legally committed. And I argue that the Clintons are a master at that. They are masters at legally getting away with pay-to-play. Do you think it's a coincidence that hundreds of millions of dollars flowed into the Clinton Foundation the moment Hillary became Secretary of State during Barack Obama's first term in office? Do you think that's just one of those lucky things? No, it was pay-to-play. And there's legal ways to do it because the system doesn't have the safeguards in it that it pretends to have. That's just the reality. Otherwise, these games couldn't be played. So now you have a game being played over, well, okay, what they did, the Trump family, his people around him, whatever, they're ethically challenged. Okay, let's be blunt about that. Fine. But they didn't do anything bad enough to where the system would say they need to be impeached or thrown in jail. Okay, well, that seems to be the case, but voters are not happy with it. In fact, a new poll indicates that voters are upset with Trump seeming to spend disproportionate amounts of time on Twitter instead of running the country. They think they intend to punish him in the election over that. Over half the Americans are saying he shouldn't be doing this. The tweets harm him. Well, news came out the other day, gleefully reported by the Trump-hating press, that he spent over 60 consecutive minutes just tweeting and retweeting. Okay, the guy was on a roll, whatever. He has the right to do that. Is it right to do that? That's a different issue. But what's going on with this report is they're saying no collusion. And Barr seems to be saying, well, since that's the bottom line conclusion, nothing's going to be done. All this other stuff doesn't matter. And if he were allowed to get away with paraphrasing Hillary Clinton, this is what I predict Barr would say. What difference does it make? Because what difference does it make, folks? Hillary can say it and get away with it, and it's okay. Because at the end of the day, what difference did all these inquiries make for Benghazi? Wasn't going to change anything. The dead were not going to come back to life. What happened wasn't going to happen again regardless. Nobody was held accountable. In fact, people were promoted. And in this case here, okay, Barr says it's a nothing burger, to quote again Hillary Clinton. But see, that's not good enough. It's look at what they did. Well, yeah, we know what they did. It's in the damn report. Read it again. But the law says you can't do anything about it. And until the law says you can, you can't. Game over. But see, they don't want to do that. And that's why this whole thing is very revealing, and it's comical. And it is identical, folks, to actually what's going on parallel to the first subject we talked about at the beginning of the show. As I said for decades now, again, because it's true, when I started to get into the subject of UFOs on October 19th, 1973, do the math, I thought, my God, this is either real or it's not. If it is real, we need to know it. If it's not real, we need to know that too, because it means we're nuts, we're crazy, we're delusional as a species, and we've got nice things like weapons of mass destruction, biological, chemical weapons, and nukes. Not a good combination. And when I saw the stupid polarized mentalities in parapsychology, in ufology, where if you dared to expose any case, especially even a popular one that most people didn't believe in, like Billy Meyer, trust me from firsthand experience, all of a sudden they hate you. You're a government debunker, CIA disinfo agent, whatever. And then, of course, when you actually end up doing some analytical work regarding fighting terrorism, and you get involved with people like Israelis because you're a Jew, da hello, and you belong to a private organization, you do write reports, you do analysis, you do talk about it, you even publish a lot of articles on it. They say, oh, you're not telling the truth. People watch too many James Bond movies. They think they're real. They think the X-File movies are real, and reality doesn't work that way. So I admire the X-Zone slogan where it says, where people dare to believe and can be heard. Yeah, but at least show some common sense. When a reporter says the Department of Defense has released this is official evidence, folks, and a senator says it, fine. But then when the Department of Defense, who supposedly released that info, says, no, we didn't do that, who are you going to believe? Well, at that point, you have a problem. You don't say, well, I believe the reporter. The Department of Defense is lying. It's not that simple. You got to check. You got to verify. And when you do bother to do that due diligence, you find out once again that the people making these claims are the ones that are not telling you the truth. The evidence is against them, and shame on TV networks for marketing fiction as if it's fact and mixing fact and fiction as if it's the same word in a synonym when it's not. We'll be back next week with another episode on Cal's Corner. Thanks for joining me here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV. plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.